Finley to throw. Over the middle, intercepted. Wolfuk again. Wolfuk the other way at the 30, the 40. Wolfuk to midfield. Miles Wolfuk with the pick. The Heels on the doorstep of an enormous victory. Williams is the running back next to Howe. Play action. Howe will now lob it down the near side. Newsom with a man all over him. Pins the ball against the back of the defender and brings it in. Heels can get a first down at the 3. Howe, one fake to the right. Now he's going to run to the left. Howe at the 5. Takes the shot. Pinballing off the chains for the touchdown. Sam Howe showing the toughness for 6. Cardinals down 4, 35-31. May has the shotgun snap. Pressure coming. Rolls to the right. Goes to the end zone. Touchdown! Touchdown, Antoine Green! 16 seconds to go. No flag. Snapping it off the 8-yard line. May pulls it, tries to roll it apart. Now he's going to throw it and score! Christian May throws it to Payson in the end zone for the touchdown! May has thrown the play through left-handed. Was rolling out on the run and threw it left-handed. Nard fields it at the 26. Heading in with Barside. Theo at the 35. Theo, he's at the 50. No, he's not. Yes, he is. Theo into the Cajun for a touchdown. Are you kidding me?
What's going on, guys? Welcome into another edition of the Heel Tough Blog Podcast. That's right. We're right back on here after doing the Winston-Salem State exhibition recap. Now it's time to talk a little bit of Tar Heel football, and Carolina on that side starting to give us something to be a little bit excited about, especially on the defensive side of the football. We'll talk about that tonight as they go into the matchup against Syracuse. We'll, of course, preview the game against Syracuse. So we'll give you all you need to know about the Syracuse Orange so far this season. We'll tell you the Tar Heel storylines for this game, give you the keys to a win. And this time, we actually mean it. Going into this one, this is a winnable game for Carolina. So we'll give you the keys to Carolina actually being able to pull it off. And then we will give you our predictions for the game. But before we do all that, we do have to dive into Carolina's latest flip in the 2026 recruiting class. They get another one here, the second one this week. Carolina goes into the state of New Jersey and picks up a commitment from Nyqir Helton, the Winslow Township High School wide receiver in the 2026 class. As we mentioned, he is a 3-star prospect, the number 1,272 overall prospect, the number 189 wide receiver, 6 foot, 170 pounds, but a guy that plays a lot on the outside. This is one of those guys that you may ask yourself, well, what exactly is Carolina getting from a guy like this? This is a late pickup to the class in terms of, the number of guys that Carolina already has. You look at the wide receiving core that Carolina already has in this class, and it feels like there are some big names that are already here. Keon Chapman, Carnell Warren, already guys that were committed to the class. You've got CJ Sadler, who's probably going to play on that side of the ball as well in the slot. So that's a guy that, fits there. So 3 big-time wide receivers. Then you've got Kamori Miles, a guy who's been committed for a while, that also is going to be a guy that can affect play on the outside. And Zamarius Robinson, another guy that you look at, and at 6'1", 165, you probably project him as a guy that's going to play on the outside. So why did you need Nyqir Helton? Well, I'm going to tell you, the one reason why I think he stands out is he's got to be the fastest wide receiver that Carolina has in this class. In terms of I believe it's the 100-meter dash, he runs a 10.68. So track speed is there for him. And that's the main thing that I think is attractive about what he brings to the table is before the catch, after the catch, there's a lot of speed. He's has the ability to win downfield, which is what Carolina's looking for. You don't have guys that are able to do that really consistently on this year's team. And so you're hoping to get that with next year's group. He also, after the catch, as I mentioned, when he gets the ball in his hands, he can turn the ball upfield, create some of those yards after catch, something that Carolina also is really struggling with this year. So you're looking for a little bit more explosiveness from this wide receiving core. That's what Helton can bring. And again, it feels like this is one of those positions where Carolina is going to bring in a bunch of guys, see who sticks at wide receiver, and then go from there. And this is a guy that I think has the ability to be able to stick for Carolina at wide receiver. Remember that some of the lower rated guys in this past recruiting class were the two wide receivers that we've seen so far this year in the slot, and Shenard Clower as a true freshman, and Madrid Tucker, who we just saw over the weekend on Saturday, play a predominant role for Carolina. So just because of the ranking doesn't necessarily mean that these guys are not going to be impactful. And this is another flip for Carolina. They flip him from Boston College. I know that's not one that's, people are overly excited about, not as excited about some of the potential flips that Carolina could be getting from a Penn State. They, of course, flipped, a guy earlier in the week from Penn State in Jaziel Hart. They do have other guys that they are looking at from both Penn State and Florida that people are excited about. But I do think that this is a guy that, as years go along, maybe he isn't a guy that immediately impacts next year, or maybe he is, and determined. It really just depends on how many guys end up leaving that wide receiver room, the opportunities that are going to be presented to him next year. I think with his speed, he is certainly a guy that's going to be able to make some sort of impact at some point in his career. The one thing that I wanted to ask you, Josh Marlowe, as we bring you in here on this edition of the podcast with the recruiting side of things, how impressed are you? Carolina just 2 wins on the season, none against power conference opponents, and yet it still is not affecting them recruiting wise. How impressed are you with some of the flips that we're seeing from this staff that they have going on in this 2026 class amidst a season that maybe we didn't necessarily expect?
Yeah, I'll echo some comments that GM Michael Lombardi has made on Carolina Football Live, the weekly radio show that he joined for the first 30 minutes, because this was a question that he was asked one week about it. And he said that people have been very receptive to Carolina's message because they've seen the struggles, and they look at it as a situation where they know that there's a greater opportunity upon immediate arrival to make an impact, as opposed to going to maybe programs that have established cultures, coaches, so on and so forth. So I think, one, the fact that Carolina is committed to bringing in this big of a class has made it easy for them to continue to recruit, and whether it's the high school or whether it's guys that are non-committed, or guys that they're now flipping out of, because you've seen so many coaches be fired. I'm not surprised by it, and I think it does give you a reason, if you're someone that's been on the fence about the vision that Lombardi has laid out. They're executing what they want to do for next year, and they are looking at next year as that foundational class that'll really turn this program around in the right direction, in the way that you expected it to when you hired Bill Belichick last December. So I think you really got to give this staff a lot of credit, and they must be doing something right, because it missed all the noise, all the chaos. They've got 39 kids now committed to them to join the football program next year, and I think it does kind of lead you to believe that whenever Belichick does get up there and mumbles whatever he's mumbling, he's not lying. He's telling you that, hey, we're still getting a good reception when we go on the road recruiting. We're still being able to get our message across to the kids that we want to get in this program, that we need to get in this program. And so I think it does maybe give you a reason to be excited about what the future could look like with these two guys running Carolina football, because they are executing the vision they laid out after getting hired a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing that really gives you hope for the future. Maybe you're not 100% on board with everything that these guys are doing, but you're hoping that this group of talent that Carolina is able to get in here can find a way to navigate everything that's going on and be successful. And you're hoping that, Bill Belichick, who seemed to be a little more or was a little receptive to the criticism that he's been receiving, you're hoping that that is the case and that he is able to become more involved. There's some people that have said he's been more involved the last 2 weeks in terms of the actual coaching on the sidelines and everything like that. He's been a little bit more involved on both sides of the ball. And, I think that certainly is something that you're hoping you're getting. And if that's the case and these guys can be developed, well, then Carolina is going to have some really good talent that's here. I mean, if you base it just off of the recruiting rankings, I mean, Carolina, you said it. They have 39 commits in the class, and this is now a top 15 class. And the thing is that we thought at some point Carolina was going to cap out here in terms of the number of guys that they were going to take in this class. We thought, okay, there's going to be a number where they're probably going to end up stopping. I don't think there's a specific number. I think they are going to try to flip as many of these guys as possible because they're looking to bring all these guys in and see who sticks. This is what they are trying to do this year, as opposed to going through the transfer portal. The transfer portal, I think they will be more strategic. They will try to find guys that really fit exactly what they're looking for. Where on the recruiting side of things, I think they are just going out, getting a bunch of guys. There are guys that they specifically like and that they think are going to be able to make impacts, but there's other guys that, have certain elements that they like. Maybe they like the motor. Maybe they like the size speed combination. And they're just hoping that they're guys that fit once they get to campus. So I think that's a little bit smarter. We've seen that teams that build that way are able to have more success. So you've got to like that aspect of what they are doing, building for next year. It's just, how long is this coaching staff going to be in place for these guys that are on campus? I think that is the big question. All right, guys, let's shift over to the on-field product for Carolina. Let's go to the game against the Syracuse Orange on Halloween night here tomorrow night, 7:30. It'll be an ESPN game for the Tar Heels. So, again, a chance to be in a national spotlight for Carolina. Hopefully this time it goes a little bit better. The Tar Heels looking to keep some momentum that they've gained over the last 2 weeks and find a win. That is something that they just desperately need, because right now, I mean, it makes sense, right? That seems like an obvious statement. Well, of course they need a win because they're trying to get to a bowl game. And look, that still is possible. But I think more than anything, just the mindset of this team to be rewarded with a win, I think would really show this group that they're doing the things that they need to do. And so this feels like an opportunity. Carolina leads the all-time series 4-3 over Syracuse. They've also won the last 2 in the series. So this is certainly an opponent that they, should feel like they have a chance against. I mean, when you look at this Syracuse team, just on the surface, I mean, this is one of the more winnable games. We talk about winnable games. We mentioned that a couple of weeks ago before the Cal game, and that was one that we, looked at and we didn't know how winnable that one was. This is one that we had circled. This one and the Stanford game, you really felt like Carolina had a chance to win these games. It feels like they really need to take advantage of this opportunity because, some of those games down the stretch, maybe feeling a little bit better about those after you come out of the game against UVA, but this really feels like one that Carolina can get and is capable of beating.
Yeah, and it would be validation for what you've done the last 2 weeks, which was lose games that you should not have lost with the way that those games went down. Like Cal, you were, a fumble away from winning that game. Virginia, you were one broken tackle away from winning that game. You go on the road, short week, you get the win against a team that's kind of in the same spot as you record-wise, and that would validate the growth and the progress that has really given us a reason to stay invested in the season. Because if Carolina would have gotten their doors blown off the last 2 weeks, how many people are on a Halloween night are going to carve out the time to watch this game? They would have took their kids trick-or-treating, gone to a Halloween party, gone to a bar, so on and so forth. But with the way that Carolina's played, well, no, okay, yeah, you're 2-5, but the 2-5 feels a lot different than it maybe felt after you ran out of the stadium against Clemson. So this one is very winnable. I want it for the kids because I think they've worked their tails off to put themselves in a position to be rewarded with the win. I want it for this coaching staff just so they can take a deep breath and kind of just relax and be, have a chance to exhale because of all the stuff they've had to endure as well. And that's just the thing, is as chaotic as this season has been and in the ways that we didn't think it was going to be chaotic, you just want it for a group that is still putting in the work. No one's thrown in the towel. No one's, thrown their hands up there and said they quit. The coaches are showing up to work. The players are showing up to work. The fans are showing up week in, week out. It feels like we all deserve a win, and hopefully that can come down tomorrow night because, Syracuse with Angeli hurt is a much more winnable game than maybe we would have thought a month or so ago.
Yeah, and I mean, you're right. Validation would be huge for this group, and everybody deserves it. Even though we were pretty critical, and I'm still critical of certain things that this staff has done so far this year based on some of the reporting and stuff like that. You want it for this group because they look like they're fighting. They look like they are still trying to put out a product that is getting better. And that's the thing, is that maybe we were, a little too aggressive in terms of what we wanted this year. But I think now, you're starting to see that progression. And in order to continue to progress in the right direction, it feels like that next step is getting over the hump and getting a win. This Syracuse team is the team that you can do it against because they are 3-5 on the season. They are 1-4 in conference play this year. Offensively, look, they're a team that still, the offensive numbers are pretty good. There's only one problem. A lot of those numbers still carry weight from the early portion of the season when Steve Angeli was back there at quarterback. 25.4 points per game, 398.4 yards of total offense per game, 285.5 passing yards per game, 112.9 rushing yards per game. The main area that you look at and you say, where are you still seeing the results from Steve Angeli? It is that passing yards number, because with Ricky Collins in there since he's taken over, Syracuse is averaging just 214.5 yards passing per game. Look, that's still a better number than what Carolina's dealing with, but it is far from a great number. Collins, the other thing about him, you look at his season so far, a little bit of a different quarterback, does run the football a little bit. Honestly, very comparable to what we've seen from Gio Lopez. 44 carries, 143 yards. So he is a threat there, but it doesn't look like they're designing a lot of runs for him. He is a guy that, so far this year, you go from Steve Angeli, who was completing 62.8% of his passes, to Collins, who's completing only 54.5% of his passes. More importantly, 6 touchdowns. He has 8 interceptions so far this year, which is tied for the lead in the ACC. That shows you how often he's been turning the football over. So certainly that's an area that he must be better in this game if Syracuse is going to be able to win. That's a reason why Syracuse comes into this game having lost 4 straight. At the running back spot, you've got 2 guys that will be carrying the football. Yasin Willis is their leading rusher, over 400 yards this season. Will Nixon, guy that's got over 250 yards rushing so far this year. And they form a solid tandem in the backfield that has run for over 650 yards. It's not going to blow anybody away. This is not going to be a team that I think is going to come out here and run all over Carolina, but they are not inept on that in that area. I mean, 112.9 per game isn't great, but they still have had moments where they've been able to run the football a little bit. They've been running it a little bit more with Ricky Collins in the game as opposed to Steve Angeli. So that's an area where Carolina, they've got to be ready to come out and continue to do what they've been doing recently against some of these running games. Wide receiver and tight end, loaded with guys that can make contributions. The problem is are they going to get the quarterback play to be able to do that? Jonte Cook, a guy that was at one time committed to Texas, incredibly talented, 39 catches, 501 yards, 2 touchdowns so far this season. You've got 2 other wide receivers on the roster that have been very productive. Daryl Gill Jr., that's their big play threat, 26 catches, 455 yards, and 5 touchdowns already this season. Justice Ross Simmons, also a guy that brings a little bit of explosiveness to the table, 20 catches, 312 yards, and 5 touchdowns. And then you've got Dan Villari, the tight end that Carolina is also going to have to be aware of. That's going to be a test for these linebackers and safeties. 31 catches, 365 yards, someone that can be relied on. So a challenging wide receiver group, but one that isn't necessarily having the success that it had when Angeli was in there, when a lot of those stats were being piled up. When you look at their offensive line, really, I think very similar to what we saw last week. Now, their offensive line clearly not paving the way for the running game the way that Virginia was, but in terms of their grades, they grade out solidly as a run blocking unit. They are giving up some pressure and some sacks in pass pro. So that's an area that Carolina should be able to take advantage. It's very similar in terms of the number of total pressures per game, a little over 10. And Carolina was really able to get after the quarterback last week. Hopefully they're able to do the same this week. You look at this offense for Syracuse. It's unfortunate what happened to Steve Angeli, but for Carolina, this is one that they should be able to take advantage of.
Yeah, if Steve Angeli was going to be on the field tomorrow, I think you wouldn't be confident about Carolina being able to slow them down enough to keep pace, because we know what Carolina is right now offensively, and they haven't scored 20 points against a power conference opponent yet. If Angeli was on the field, I think seeing Carolina coming away with a win would be a lot harder than what it is right now, where I do think, of course, we'll make our predictions later in the show, but Ricky Collins, is averaging just a little over 210 passing yards per game. And with a group that's as dynamic and as explosive as the skill position players are with that Syracuse offense, it's kind of underwhelming, because this is supposed to be a big play offense that puts up yards, points, and puts a lot of pressure on the defense. That's not where they're at right now. And so with all the progress we've seen Carolina make the last 2 weeks and what they did last week against Virginia, I think it's fair to expect a similar performance from Carolina's defense, to where they give up 17 to 21 points, give themselves a really good chance to win this football game. So obviously they got to keep doing what they're doing. You got to keep winning up front. You've got to get pressure on the quarterback. You got to win on 1st and 2nd down to put the defense in 3rd and 7s, 3rd and 8s for the majority of the time. But this offense isn't as dynamic. It's not as daunting as a task to stop as it was when they were walking the ball up and down the field against Clemson not too long ago. So with the way Carolina's played the last 2 weeks and some of the issues that Syracuse is dealing with kind of internally, just with some injuries, I think it's fair to expect Carolina's defense to show up for the 3rd straight week and give Carolina a legitimate shot to come away with a victory.
Yeah, I mean, this is the worst offense that they've played since Charlotte. So I think that's what you're hoping they're able to take advantage of. I mean, defensively, they've looked good against some offenses that were, pretty solid. I mean, that's what I would classify Cal's as, and Virginia's was one of the better ones in the ACC. And I get it. Everybody's saying that, part of the reason why Virginia struggled was that Chandler Morris is dealing with a shoulder issue, wasn't nearly as accurate. No, this defense deserves a little bit of credit. And we'll talk more about this defense coming up, but I really do think that this is one of those games where you feel like this matchup for this defense really works in Carolina's favor, and hopefully they're able to take advantage of it. You move over to the defensive side of the ball. This is a group that's not good defensively either. I mean, this group allowing 31.2 points per game, 436.4 yards of total offense, 273.9 yards passing per game, 162.5 rushing yards per game. Really, you can attack this group in both areas. The numbers aren't historically bad, but they certainly aren't good and trend towards the bottom of the ACC. And so this is a group that, I think the best way to describe their defense is how I describe their defensive line. their defense is very hit or miss. There are moments where they are very successful. There's two guys on the defensive line, Kevin Jobity Jr., as well as David Reese. They are guys that, when they can get pressure on the quarterback, they can make life hard for you. Jobity has 5 sacks so far this year, 18 total quarterback pressures, 19 total quarterback pressures for David Reese. 2 of those have resulted in sacks. Those guys, that's the thing. There's not much consistency to their game, though. So that's something that hopefully Carolina can take advantage of. Maybe this is an off game for them, although with Carolina's line, the way they've been playing over the last few weeks, find it hard to believe that that is going to be the case. They're going to have to really dig in and have a strong performance. The linebacker spot, this is another thing that really defines this group, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Very young group. Anton Deloriers is a guy that is having a really successful season in his first year at Syracuse as a true freshman, is starting for them and is leading the team in tackles so far this year. He's been, or second on the team so far in tackles this year. Gary Bryant does have one more than him, but still, this is a solid linebacker group. Bryant has struggled a little bit in coverage. That's something that Carolina should be able to take advantage of. But Deloriers has been really solid alongside of him. So definitely a linebacking core, that has some potential for the future. But right now, not being able to slow down that run the way that they probably want to, maybe that's something that Carolina can exploit in this game. You go to the defensive backs. They have been very hit or miss throughout the season. When I went through looking at the Pro Football Focus grades for these guys, top 2 players are your outside corners in Chris Peel and Demetrius Samuel Jr. They've also been really up and down at times in coverage. The completion percentages against them, not incredibly high, especially with Samuel Jr. He's allowing less than 50% of his targets to be caught, but he's allowed 252 yards and 3 touchdowns so far this year. He's got 8 pass breakups, though, and 1 interception. Also has 5 penalties that have been called on him. So you talk about an up and down corner, a guy that at times looks really good. There's other times where he's really frustrating. Chris Peel, a little more consistent on the other side of him, hasn't taken a penalty this year, but has allowed 269 yards, 2 touchdowns, and only has 2 pass breakups. But the middle of the field, really an area where Carolina is going to be able to attack. Their linebackers have had trouble, and they've rotated a lot of different safeties on and off the field for them. So that is certainly something that Carolina is going to have to be aware of in this game. Hopefully they can take advantage of that in this game. We've talked about how the tight ends haven't necessarily been involved, or we talked about that last night when we were at the game. Only 2 catches for Carolina from their tight ends in the last 2 games. That could be an area that they potentially look to exploit, or this is an area where those young slot receivers, Clower, Madrid Tucker, might be able to take advantage of them. This defense, you look at the struggles that they've had so far this year, looks like, another unit. I'm not saying this is a get-right game for Carolina, because it feels like there are a lot of things that they still have to figure out offensively themselves. But this feels like probably the best chance, again, since that Richmond game, that Carolina will be able to put some points on the board.
Yeah, no doubt. This is a group that when Syracuse defensive line plays well, it gives their defense a chance. Kind of reminds you of what Carolina's defense has been so far this season. If their defensive line can get pressure on the quarterback, if they can win on first and second down, they can make enough plays to either put them in position to win or be competitive. If they struggle, then they really don't have a whole lot of resistance, and you can run it on them. You can throw it on them, which hopefully this means we see the most aggressive game plan from Freddie Kitchens that we've seen so far this season, because there's simply just not an excuse good enough to justify Carolina not scoring over 20 points per game in this game and not putting up over 350 yards of offense in this game and kind of, looking like a modern offense in 2025 in college football, or an offense that we've seen the last handful of years. We were getting spoiled by Sam Howell and Drake May at the quarterback spot. So, some of it is, injuries have definitely played a part. a little bit of youthfulness as well. But Carolina, at some point, they've got to really put it together on the offensive end. Belichick and co. keep saying that they're getting closer and closer to it all coming together. This is the right type of opponent for Carolina to really find their footing on the offensive side of the football. And if this team is going to, win its way into a bowl game, they've got to be able to put more points on the board than they've done against power conference competition so far. What better way to start it than doing it on the road tomorrow night in a game where they should get at least 24 points against a Syracuse defense that's been in free fall for the last month and a half or so?
It's all we're asking, man. Can you get to that 20-point mark? Can you find a way? I mean, even if you give me 24, it feels like this defense has what it takes to be able to slow down this offense and find a way to win this game. That's the thing. Carolina's had the opportunity the last 2 weeks to pull out victories. Their offense just hasn't been able to get them over the finish line. Hopefully in this game, they're able to do that. And you know what? We jump into the Tar Heel storylines. Let's continue talking about the offense and why they're still struggling. I mean, I think, you saw there was a breakdown from inside Carolina. They do a tremendous job over there of breaking stuff down after the game, some of the film room stuff that they do. And, one of the things that they pointed out is it's not all on Gio. The wide receivers have struggled running their routes. That's certainly something that isn't overly shocking, especially when you get to the point where you are running multiple true freshmen out there like they've done with Shenard Clower and Madrid Tucker so far this year. That's an area that they've got to be better in. And quarterback play, I think, still struggling at this point. It's been better, but it still is not where it necessarily needs to be. That's where you're hoping Carolina is going to progress in this game, is that, eventually as the season goes along, hopefully Gio Lopez, can continue to be more and more efficient in the short passing game. Maybe it opens some things up down the field and he's able to hit a couple of those shots that he has, per game in the intermediate and deep passing game. I'm not expecting this to be an offense that's all of a sudden going to come out and be explosive, but it's about taking advantage of the opportunities that are there. It feels like Carolina's had the opportunities to take advantage of. They just haven't been able to do it the last couple of weeks, and hopefully that's what you're going to see from this group. I think one of the things they've got to do, something that they've done a better job of the last 2 weeks, is run blocking. I think you need to run the football. This is a game against a team allowing 162.5 rushing yards per game. Let's see these backs on the ground. And the thing is, we've talked about it. One of the issues that they're having right now in that backfield, and the reason why I think they haven't been a good running team so far this year, they've been a below average running game, is because they've been rotating guys so much. There's no continuity. We've talked about the success that Damon June had early in the season. Well, let's see you stick with him. Or if Benjamin Hall is the guy that you feel like is the best guy for you right now, okay, that's fine. I don't agree with that, but let's stick with him and allow him to sort of work himself into a game and potentially have a little bit of success. Or if it's Goss, whoever it is, let that guy work themselves into the game instead of rotating these guys on and off like it's a fire drill where you just don't know who, there's no chance for anybody to get any sort of momentum going. And I think it's led to the point where Carolina isn't able to run the ball as consistently as they should be able to when they've had guys that have made plays throughout the year. It's just you're not on the field to consistently make enough of them. I think that's part of the reason why Carolina's offense is still struggling, and hopefully those are some things that can get ironed out in this game against a lesser defense.
Yeah, for me, this should be a game where I want to see Carolina establish the run and then build their passing game, their play action passing game off of that, and really get Gio settled down in a rhythm, get some confidence in himself. It would help if his wide receivers don't fumble the ball to the back of the end zone. It would also help that whenever they take those deep shots, maybe they're throwing to guys that are deep pass receivers. I don't think Madrid Tucker is one of those guys that right now fits the bill, but yeah, this should be a game where Carolina's offense should, I'm not going to say have its way because it's just hard for me to say that with a straight face, but it should look more modern, look more competent, and look closer to what we got used to seeing all those years with Sam and with Drake. But it starts with establishing whoever your running back's going to be, whether it's going to be Hall this game, Devon June, for all we know, it could be Goss they put out there and want to run the football 12, 15, 18 times with. But I think that's what I want to see is Carolina establish the run, because that means they're controlling the line of scrimmage. And when they've been able to give Gio time and he can dissect the defense and not have to run for his life, his decision-making has gotten better. And I think he's made some better throws here down in the last couple of weeks that he would not have made the first month and a half of the season or so. So it's hard to ask, too much, because if this was what we were dealing with the Mac Brown era, with where Syracuse's defense is at, we would say, hey, Vitty Berger should be in play here. I can't go on a record and say that with a straight face, but can you score 3 touchdowns? Can you give me 4 scoring drives of 3 touchdowns and a field goal? Can you get to 24, 27, maybe 28 points? Because if Carolina gets there, it really makes it easier to see them having a pathway to come away with the win on the road. And so it all starts up front. It starts with that run game, which is still the thing I think Carolina's offense does best, no matter which running back they want to feature this week. And so I think if they can establish that they're going to control the line of scrimmage, run the ball the way they want to be able to run the ball, it should make life easier for Gio Lopez. And maybe Carolina can avoid the turnovers that they've had in the red zone the last couple of weeks and put enough points on the board to come away with a win.
Yeah, I mean, I think this group is finding its identity offensively. They are a run-first team that is going to be able to succeed in the short passing game, and that's how they're going to move the football. I think in between the 20s, they've moved it a lot better these last couple of weeks, and that's a credit to these guys across the board, but it's also a big credit to Gio Lopez. He's gotten better. He's still not great. You would still say that with above average quarterback play, Carolina could have stumbled into a win in one of these last 2 weeks. I think right now you're probably getting about average quarterback play from him. But I think in this game, if you get average quarterback play from him, if you can run the football a little bit more effectively, then you're going to be able to win. You mentioned the biggest thing. I think there are 2 things in this game that Carolina has to be able to take care of that they weren't able to the last couple of weeks. That's turnovers and the red zone. Those are areas where Carolina has just not had success in these last 2 games. They've gotten into the red zone. They've had plenty of attempts down there, but haven't necessarily been able to come away with the points that they needed to. The turnovers have been a big issue for Carolina. You've had back-to-back weeks where Carolina has fumbled a ball out of the back of the end zone. You had a promising scoring drive last week that got into the red zone, could have given you the points that you needed to be able to win that game in regulation, a late throw by Gio Lopez, and unfortunately it turns into a turnover. Those are areas that Carolina simply has to be better in this one. If you can hold on to the football, if you can find a way to score when you get down into the red zone, and by score, I mean you've got to score touchdowns. It can't just be field goals. You need to be able to put those points on the board. If Carolina can get down there, find a way to come away with a successful day in the red zone, maybe you do have a field goal down there, but in the 4 attempts, you come away with points 4 different times and don't turn the football over, then Carolina has a chance to have success in this game against the Syracuse Orange.
100% agree with that. I think it was 5 times Carolina was in the red zone last week, and you came away with two scoring drives. It's hard to win football games when you get to the red area and you're not as productive as you were as you previously been. We had Jones Angel on the show this morning, and that's the first thing he mentioned. He goes, Carolina went from being in the red zone 4 or 5 times a half and coming away with points on just about every drive to where now you don't know how frequently you're going to get down there, and you're not coming away with points the way that we Carolina fans have grown accustomed to. And so, especially with the way I think Carolina wants to shorten the games, they really want to limit possessions. It really puts that much importance. And at this point, I mean, it's stress to come away with points. and make sure you come away with 6 instead of 3, because field goals get you beat, especially when you're playing, 8 to 10 possession games, which I think, for many football fans, they don't really realize that that's like Carolina's playing an NFL style in terms of the possessions that they're playing. College football, you typically get 12 to 14 possessions in a football game. That's not the way the NFL operates. It's about 8 to 10, and you got to maximize those. And Carolina has not done a really good job of that so far this season. If you eliminate the turnovers, then those numbers look a little bit better. And Carolina's 4-3 as opposed to 2-5. And so you got to imagine that was probably the biggest point of emphasis in practice this week when they worked on the red zone stuff, was just not turn the freaking football over and only reach that ball out across the goal line if you're 100% sure you're going to score. Like, we'd much rather Kobe Paysor been tackled at the half-yard line as opposed to him trying to reach the ball out to make a play, and the ball rolls through the end zone and goes the other way, and now you got nothing to show for it. So I think it's going to be a big thing tomorrow. It's always a big thing when you're on the road, but when Carolina gets to that red area, and it's not as frequently as we're used to seeing, they got to make sure they're coming away with points, but understanding, 2 6-point trips are better than 3 3-point trips. They've got to get touchdowns in the red zone and not settle for field goals.
Yeah, it's all about efficiency, man. That's the thing that we talked about early in the season with this offense, is that the way that they run, you need to be efficient. And being efficient means not turning the football over when you get these opportunities to score, and not coming away with just field goals or turning the football over in the red zone, especially. I mean, yeah, as Jones said, you went from being a team that in halves would have 5-6 appearances in the red zone, and you were putting up points left and right. Every time you got down there, you felt pretty confident that Carolina was going to come away with that. I mean, yeah, there were complaints about Carolina, coming away with field goals. I mean, now we'd be dying for that. I mean, if we could get that with what we've seen defensively, Carolina would be winning a lot of these games. Instead, we're getting turnovers. And so holding on to the football, valuing the ball, you talked about it with Kobe Paysor. That's a moment you don't have to stretch that ball out, man. It's early. We've got momentum in the game. Hold on to that football. Go down at the 1-yard line, 2-yard line even, and you feel like Carolina is going to be able to find a way to get into the end zone from there. Later in the game, he did learn from that. He had another big catch. He goes down at the 1-yard line. Carolina ends up finding a way to get into the end zone. That's what you're hoping that you're going to see from Carolina in this game against Syracuse, because that's one of the ways for Syracuse, a struggling defense like that, they're looking to find a way to get turnovers. So Carolina's got to make sure they're taking care of the ball. And then defensively, I think Carolina, this is the reason to be positive going into this game. This is the reason to feel like they have a chance to win this one. This group has found their footing. Took a little bit of time. There were some bumps in the road for this group. There's no doubt about that. They were torn up in that passing game. But if they can get even half the production that they got from that group up front in the game against Virginia on passing downs, then they're going to be successful. I'm not worried about them on running downs. That's an area that I think this team, we have not talked enough about it. And I think part of it was we were wondering whether or not it was just because of how bad this passing defense was that you were having success as a rushing defense. That's not the case. This run defense is good. On the interior of this defensive line, give credit to those guys, even though they haven't really been able to get a ton of pressure on the quarterback. Everybody that rotates in there, they've got a 4-man rotation that has been absolutely tremendous, and everybody that rotates in there, I think, has really looked good in run defense. You've got linebackers that are swarming to the football, making tackles, and it really helps when you've got guys on the defensive line that can do that for you. I mean, you allow 1.7 yards per carry last week to Virginia. I feel like this group's going to be able to perform in this one. If Carolina can just get the performance that they got from that edge rush group, get some of those sacks from the interior that they got as well, just get some pressure from the interior in this game, that I think Carolina has a chance to be very successful, because I am fully on board with this defense right now. I think Steve Belichick, has got a group that's competing its rear ends off every single week that it's out there. They seem bought in after the debacle against Clemson. That something changed during that bye week, and he's been more aggressive. And that's the reason why going into this game against Syracuse, I feel like Carolina has a good chance to win this game.
Yeah, absolutely, because, it's not a coincidence that Carolina starts winning their one-on-one battles up front. They're getting much more consistent pressure on the quarterback. The defense looks like we thought it was going to look when they brought in Steve Belichick, when you hired Bill Belichick to begin with. And then you brought in, with Thad Dixon, who unfortunately is hurt, and Andrew Simpson, Kamori House. Like, you add some of the talent that Carolina added to the defensive side of the football, and now you're starting to see them be able to do some things schematically defensively that is advanced, makes it, I think it's why Chandler Morris, yes, I know he was injured. I thought Carolina just kept him off balance last week because he knew the pass rush was getting to him, but he also couldn't dissect what Carolina was throwing at him either. And so if that is something that's going to be real, and that's who Carolina is going to be here moving forward, then the defense will put them in a chance every Saturday to give themselves a chance to win. And they got to go 4-1 down the stretch. If they want to get into a bowl game, if they can get a win like this on the road, I think that gives you something as a Carolina fan, something to believe in. So I think that's been the biggest evidence that, this coaching staff, they're still locked in. But more importantly, the players are still locked in, that they're not tuning out what's being preached to them. Because Carolina, before the bye week stuff, started, I mean, that Clemson tape was bad. And we've seen some bad defensive tape in our time doing the podcast and in our time just being, diehard Carolina football fans. But now it's been cleaned up, and Carolina looks like the part of maybe what you saw when you were watching Butch Davis run the show, and they were able to do some NFL type of stuff there as well. So it's first off, it's been fun to watch. It's kind of refreshing to see good defensive football back in Chapel Hill once again. I also think part of this is that this team knows that from an identity standpoint, the defense has to be what gives this team a chance, because Carolina's not equipped to win shootouts. And so they know they can only give up probably 17, 21, maybe 24 points at a maximum. So I'm excited to see what this group looks like on the road once again, because if they're anywhere as good as they've been the last 2 weeks on that side of the ball, I think it gives them as a legitimate a shot to win going into the game, more so than we thought the last 2 weeks with those close losses at Cal and at home to Virginia.
All right, let's get to the keys to the game for this matchup against the Syracuse Orange. First key to the game, I have win on first and second down. And I think you could say, well, which side of the ball are you talking about? It really goes for both. I think what Carolina's been doing defensively on first and second down has been amazing these last 2 weeks. It has put these offenses in third and long situations. It allows these edge rushers to pin their ears back, go after the quarterback, and it's resulted in much more pressure in the last 2 weeks than Carolina was able to get in the first first 4 games of the season. First 5 games of the season, excuse me. I mean, this group, they've done everything that they've needed to do. We talk about how, good the run defense is. That's an area where they've really shined too. But even, some of those early passing downs, Carolina has been much more aggressive. They've been breaking on the football a lot better. So they have to keep that up. And then offensively, you just want to put yourself in those third and short situations. This is a defense for Syracuse that is going to give up some third downs. And so can Carolina take advantage of that? Best way to do that is to get into third and manageable situations. Don't have to necessarily always put it on the arm of Gio Lopez. There are times where you can put it on the ground and Carolina is able to pick up a first down that way. Or even if they don't pick up a first down, if they're in plus territory, maybe they can go for it on fourth down. That's what you're looking to do. I think it's very important to do that against the Syracuse team that you should be able to do that against. And so Carolina's got to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I'll focus more on the offensive side of the ball, because I've told you all year long, Carolina's done a really good job defensively the first 2 downs, getting into 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7s. where and now they're starting to get off the field like you expect to in those down and distances. Biggest thing is here on the road with the limited quarterback and just a limited offense. Carolina can't be in 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8 all night. Like they've got to be able to get to 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3s, and maybe put themselves in position to, once they cross the 50-yard line, to get inside the opponent's 40. Maybe that becomes 4-down territory for Carolina as well, but that's only possible if you're getting to 3rd and 2s, 3rd and 1s on a routine, consistent basis, just because you don't want Gio Lopez having to throw the ball 15, 20 times because it's 3rd and 7. Because then Syracuse can do what we've been able to do, which is pin our ears back, disguise a coverage or two, and just go get the quarterback. So, yes, it's important to do so defensively, but I think it's really important offensively to not ask too much of Gio to have to win the game. Just allow him to manage the game, and you can do that by, being aggressive on 1st and 2nd down, being assertive on 1st and 2nd down, getting those 3rd and shorts to where you can convert more often than not. So it's a really good key to the game, because I think whichever team is better on 3rd down might be the most telling stat of which team comes out with this game with a victory.
Yeah, I think that is definitely the case. Another thing the Carolina's got to do is value that football, take care of it in this game, because the last 2 weeks, that's been the reason that you've lost. You could put some of the, stuff in the Virginia game on just the fact that they didn't convert in the red zone just in general, but a big part of that is 2 turnovers in the red zone. You have the turnover in the game against Cal that really turned the page in that one, and even the opening fumble on the opening offensive play, that gave Cal a touchdown that if they don't have, maybe Carolina comes away with a victory. These turnovers have been very important for Carolina. That's why I think they must value the football in this game. You're not going to get a lot of extra possessions. Maybe you can create some turnovers in this game, but this group hasn't. That's one thing that this defense hasn't really been doing a lot of here throughout the season, is creating a lot of turnovers. So since you're not able to necessarily do that in the other direction, you need to value that football. I think that is a big key for this game for Carolina. If they're going to pull out a victory against Syracuse, don't give their struggling offense those extra opportunities.
Yeah, Carolina forcing turnovers, that's the next step for this defense. Probably something that is going to be on the table more so next year, when Carolina, I think, adds some much better talent up front. You get a second year in the system. I think you'll see Carolina take a step in that direction defensively. Offensively, especially with the limited possessions that you're playing, you can't come away with too many donuts, man, especially once you get into the scoring era. Once you get into the red zone, man, you can't come away with nothing. And Carolina's done that a little too much here, and it's a big reason why they're 2-5 as opposed to being 4-3 with some of the offensive issues that Syracuse has. Look at some of the offensive issues Carolina has. I think it's why I think 3rd down efficiency and turnovers are going to be even more important in this game than they usually are. If Carolina can play a clean football game, I think it'll go a long way to showing them just how far they can go and down the stretch. How competitive can they be down the stretch? So hopefully they can do that, and they can keep the ball out of harm's way, because they've coughed it up 2-3 times in totality. It's probably going to be a long night, let alone if they're doing so in the red zone, taking points off the board.
The last key to the game, I have it as passing game needs to show progress. And you said that one thing that you want to see in this game is them using the run game to really carry them offensively. I definitely think that is certainly something that you have to do. But when it comes to showing progress, it's just about being efficient, hitting those plays that are there for you to hit. It still feels like there's moments where Gio Lopez is missing some throws. The timing's a little bit off. You've got to be able to hit those throws in this game and be able to consistently move this offense, because you saw it a little bit in the game against Virginia. Carolina was able to move the ball pretty consistently in between the 20s. You want to be able to do that again in this game, because if you're able to do that, if this passing game can succeed and Gio Lopez can take even another small step, doesn't have to be large, but if he can find a way, to throw for 230 yards in this game, maybe find the end zone a time or two, something like that, it really feels like Carolina will be able to take advantage of a struggling secondary. And that's the thing that I really you'll want to see from this passing game. This secondary is having its issues, so you need to be able to capitalize against it. This is one of those games where you should see them take a step in this area, and so I think that's one of the keys to the game for Carolina, is to actually be able to do it.
Yeah, I think Carolina has done a better job, still not to the level I'd like to see them at, but they're doing a better job putting their playmakers in position to make plays. They're getting the football more often than they did before the second bye week. But like, you're on the road in the conference play, your quarterback's going to have to make throws to win the game. That's just the nature of the beast, man. It's very rare can you just line up, run the ball at your opponent, and be able to come away with the win. So can he make those throws on 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7s in the second half that keeps the drive alive, that maybe takes you from outside of field goal range to inside of field goal range on your way to going to get a touchdown? I think there's more trust with Gio from the play calling aspect, because they've pushed the ball downfield a little bit more the last couple weeks than they did the beginning of the year. So yeah, it's got to take the next step, because God forbid the last thing we want to do when we're in the station on Monday, is talking about, could Max Johnson been the guy that maybe led Carolina to a victory. So the staff has remained committed to Gio. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. But you got to see the passing offense continue to evolve. He's been more efficient the last couple of weeks. They've started to push the football down the field just a little bit more, but they got to be able to do so in this game against a secondary that should allow Carolina to pick on them if they can hold up in pass pro. And this should be a game that if Carolina wins, it would probably be the best passing box score of Gio Lopez's UNC career so far, and I don't think that would be a coincidence if that happens to be the case.
Yeah, and I think if he's able to do that, then Carolina is going to have a really good chance to win this game. Let's get to our predictions for the game. As always, I'll let you begin. What do you see happening? 7:30 p.m. kick on Friday, the October 31st, in the JMA Wireless Dome over on ESPN.
Yeah, a few weeks ago, I would have picked Syracuse to win the game, and would have picked Syracuse to win the game probably going away, even with all the injuries. But I've seen the way Carolina's fought and battle competed the last 2 weeks. We've seen what's happened with Syracuse, ever since they lost their quarterback. And this now leads me to believe that this might be, outside of Stanford, the most winnable game left on the schedule. Even though it's a game on the road, and it's just the second time ever Carolina's played at their building since they joined the ACC, which is wild to think about. I think Carolina wins. I think Gio Lopez makes the throws that he didn't make against Virginia. I think Carolina's able to run the ball, soften up the defense before they hit them for a big play or two down the field with play action pass. So call me a homer, call me stupid, call me whatever you want to call me. I think Carolina travels to Syracuse. They get their third win of the season, 24-21, to keep their playoff hopes, not the playoff hopes alive, but to keep their bowl chances alive, and really give a reason to still stay invested down the stretch. So give me Carolina on the road in the close one, 24-21 over the Orange.
Yeah, I hate to admit it. The playoff chances were probably gone after week one. But I think this is to me the most winnable game they have remaining on their schedule, because Stanford, I mean, you saw what they were able to do last week to Florida State. They're a team that is playing better. They're playing more competitive football than I think many of us thought. And I would like to believe Carolina can still win that game, but I do think this Syracuse team is just really struggling, man. I mean, you've got a lot of turnovers coming from the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, they're not great, especially against the pass. The run defense, not great either. But I think, that's something that Carolina should hopefully be able to exploit. The reason I feel confident in saying this defense is really playing its rear end off here these last couple of weeks. And I think that's the reason you should feel confident. I think they're going to be able to stop the run. I think what they were able to do last week against Virginia's offensive line, they'll be able to put up maybe not a similar performance is tough because I don't think they're going to have 6 sacks in this game. But in terms of the amount of pressure that they were able to get, I think they're going to be able to do that because I think they're going to win on first and second down. And that's what's really been the difference the last 2 weeks. I think you see that again in this game. This offense for Syracuse will struggle to score, and Carolina's offense will be a little bit better. I think it will be just efficient enough. I think they're going to learn from the turnover issues they've had the last couple of weeks in the red zone. They're going to take care of the football when they get down there, and that's what's ultimately going to be the difference. It's not going to be that high scoring of a game for Carolina. I don't think you're going to see that, but I do think that Carolina does end up emerging in this one 24-17 over Syracuse. I'm going with the same prediction our guy Panther Bo went with. That was exactly what I was thinking before the show. So give me that for Carolina and them to get their first victory since the game against Richmond and their first power conference victory of the Bill Belichick era. Regardless of what happens, we'll be here covering it for you on the Heel Tough Blog podcast and over on the Heel Tough blog. Make sure you go over to the website. We're going to have something up later tonight about Nyqir Helton. Make sure that you guys are checking that out. Of course, if you missed the breakdown of him a little bit earlier in the edition of the podcast, just go back, check it out for us. We'd really appreciate that from you guys. And we would also appreciate it if you would check out the previous edition of the podcast that we also did on the basketball side of things earlier this evening, the Winston-Salem State recap. So make sure that you guys are doing that. It's the same places that you get this podcast, the Facebook page, the YouTube page, also on Twitter if you want to watch it that way. So make sure that you guys are doing that. And when you're over there on that YouTube page, make sure that you guys are subscribing to that YouTube page. That is certainly something that we have been pushing, hoping that that's going to help us get some sponsors. So we are right there, guys. We are 3 away from getting to 500, and then we're hoping to continue it from there. So make sure that you guys are subscribed to that page. Mention the Twitter, social media, best place to follow to get all our content in one central location. Of course, we'll have you covered on this game when it comes to the football side of things, every game the rest of the year. And then, of course, every basketball game coming up, guys. Season opener Monday night against Central Arkansas. We're going to have you covered, wall-to-wall coverage on the website. And then, of course, over on the podcast, plenty of podcast editions that we still got to do. We still got to preview the season coming up tomorrow. So make sure that you guys are checking out those channels. And then still have to preview the Central Arkansas game, which will come your way on Saturday. So plenty of great content coming up for you guys from the Heel Tough Blog, boys. Make sure that you guys are locked in. So that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the podcast. Want to thank Josh for hosting with me. Want to thank you guys for watching and listening. And as always, go Tar Heels.